All right, great. So welcome to the second session of 700 GBS. We'll be looking at question number 3, which begins by asking us what the types of literature review are. Okay, so remember from our PowerPoints, literature review comes to is the one that bridges the studies, the previous studies methodology to yours, the previous studies findings to yours. And it's important for you to carry out literature review so that you can extensively know what other things are being discussed, what has been written around the same certain concept. And do remember also that in literature review, there are a few concepts. This hasn't been asked in the paper. I'm just trying to recall what you should know in your PowerPoint. Now, there are also things like triangulation, things like theoretical underpinnings, things like empirical literature review. What is it? Why is it so important? These are the things that you might want to expect in qualitative research questions. So the types of literature review really are just a few. No, they're actually quite a number, but I'll try to give an example. Most of the times, whenever you see literature review, it's just 3. Okay, so it's actually just 2. Theoretical and empirical literature review. But there's been more modulations of literature review. For us, for Unilars, not for us, but for Unilars, they are just 2. Okay, they're just 2. We're just basically looking at the empirical and the theoretical literature review. So, but I bet if you could find, if you go on Google and try to look for the other empirical literature reviews, you would find that they're actually more than just 2. Now, I want to introduce a few concepts such as triangulation, such that you may want to have a good grasp of these things. Because believe me, you might find a question that asks you in compulsory section, or perhaps in the other section of quantitative to define what triangulation is. And if you're blank, don't know anything, that becomes a bit of a problem, because triangulation is important in your research. Also, you might also want to get yourself familiar with it for the sake of the questions around it. Okay, so let's just get into the section for triangulation. I'll quickly just delve into, because what we're trying to look at right now is this question: discuss the types and describe the characteristics of empirical, enumerate the various gaps identified in empirical, differentiate between theoretical review and theoretical framework, and then we've got the structuring of literature resources in the second chapter of the research dissertation. Okay. All right. So yeah. So this is what we're just basically looking for. And we get 10 marks for this. I feel this is really, really simple. If I were you, and I would look at this, I would definitely pick it up. But you do remember that what we're trying to drive at here is us under chapter 2. So as you're preparing for QRM exam or test, whether qualitative or quantitative, you must be aware that you know the contents of each and every chapter from chapter 1 to chapter 6. Okay, at most know up to chapter 3. Maybe if you don't have much time, because the other course is also demanding, know from chapter 1 to chapter 3, because it's very important that you understand the contents of those sections. So that when you know that research design and methodology, which section does it fall in? You know it falls in chapter 3. Because if you don't even know the structure of your thesis or your report or your proposal, I don't really think you're even fit for the exam itself, because you get confused. All right. So let's proceed with our analysis, really. And we are still trying to look at the types of literature review that are there. I've already mentioned the 2 major ones, which are the theoretical and the empirical. Okay, but research has been diversifying. Okay, so you'd find that there have been other other additional sections of the literature review that are very important. Okay, so let's delve into that. So there is what we are referring to as the traditional literature review, which mostly refers to the long span of information. So allow me to just simply step them off as they are, as they really are, because it's important that you just know them. So there is the narrative or traditional literature review that is generic. Then we've got the systematic and the meta-analysis. Again, remember that what we are looking at are they're not the generic types of literature review. Maybe you might be asked to list the others, but if I were you, all these would actually trickle down to what we're just we'll be looking at as the theoretical or empirical literature review. So narrative or traditional literature review provides a broad overview of the literature on a specific topic, and so this is often extensive and includes a long time span. All right. And then there's systematic review, which is rigorous and systematic approach to reviewing research literature on a particular topic and often answering a specific research question. And this is what we normally do when we are doing it for the case of UNILAS. We normally conduct this. It can be conducted in either empirical section or theoretical section, but systematic literature review is just where you begin from answering the specific research questions. All right. Then in the meta-analysis, we are looking at the statistical approach to combine the results from multiple studies. And this is just the other word for empirical. So now you see why most of these are simply narrowing down to, empirical and theoretical. So if I were to handle this in an exam, I would simply state the main two branches, which are theoretical, okay, and I would state empirical. So when I do state these empirical literature headings, I would say under empirical, that's where meta-analysis can come in, okay, and under a theoretical, that's where narrative or traditional can come in. All right, so we're just categorizing them like that. Okay, so again, if you've got a question, please come in, just type it in the inbox. I'll be able to look at it quickly. Okay, so let's proceed with the others. We've got 6 marks to fight for. If I were you just writing theoretical and classifying them, that could earn me enough as sufficient marks. But if you feel much more generous to even answer others, you can look at also what we refer to as scoping review or state-of-the-art review. Okay, so scoping review or state-of-the-art review. Again, these are not generic sections, but if you feel you can remember them in the exam, feel free. Okay, there are other extended literature review, and all these must fall between or within the two generic prospects of it. So there's scoping review where coverage helps determines the scope or coverage of the body of literature on a given topic and gives an overview of its main concepts, so theories and findings. And then the state of the art, which focuses on the current developments. So however your supervisor would want it to be done, for UNILAS, it's just under theoretical and empirical. In the notes that we have for PowerPoint, you just find theoretical and empirical, maybe even systematic, I don't know, but I've just found 2. Yeah, so you can have a look at them and get back to the class in the next sessions. All right. So now let's just keep on delving further. So the next part of the question is asking us on the characteristics of empirical literature review. What are the characteristics of empirical literature review? All right. So for a start, remember that empirical literature reviews objectives are to firstly find the methodologies. Okay, so let me say find the methodologies. Okay, mind methodology. Then 2, it's to find the results. And then 3, criticize. So criticize either the methodology or the results. Then 4, create a gap. What do I mean, find the methodology? What did John and what did Chiti and Piri find? Or what method did they employ in conducting their research on the effect of low mortality on economic output? All right. What did Chiti and John found, and Chiti and Mumba find, or whatever that you could phrase it to be? So first of all, they used a mixed method approach. And where did they carry this study? All right. So I'm doing a literature review as at the moment right now. So I'll say this methodology, what method, what approach did they use? Okay, so Chiti and Piri in their study on effects of, what did I say? Effect of mortality rate on economic output. They used a case study for South Africa. Okay, so this was in South Africa on the economic output of South Africa. So okay, so this was in South Africa, and then what methodology or approach they used? They used a mixed method. All right, or let's say they used a qualitative approach. Okay, let's say a qualitative approach. Okay, a qualitative. Then what are the results? They found that the higher the mortality rate, the lower the productive or the economic output. So what do we then criticize? We say, okay, well, first and foremost, this study was conducted in South Africa. So our study on mortality rate and economic output is being now done in Zambia. So this is different. So we can't have the same results because Zambia is different from South Africa. All right. More so, you look at the qualitative approach. Perhaps you use a more involving or more extensive approach, which is the quantitative. Okay, obviously both qualitative and quantitative are strong, but numbers never lie, so they say. So you would apply the quantitative approach, a different method, or perhaps a mixed method which applies both qualitative and quantitative data. Then because of that mismatch in information or in places and whatever methods approached, you've already created a gap. That's where now your study comes to fill in. That's what empirical literature review does. So you do this for all the studies, okay? You do this for all the studies. Some others even go to a point where they look at the sample size used. Others even go to a point where they look at the methodology. I mean the sampling techniques used. Perhaps they use a different sampling technique. Those are the intricacies that you look at when you're conducting an empirical literature review. All right. So now let me write to you. I was just trying to give you a hint on how or what essence of empirical literature review is, because you might be asked to find that. Okay. So I'll list them in a very orderly way, the characteristics of empirical literature review, just so that you could have an idea of what I am talking about here. So 1, it's based on actual observation, experimentation. I talked about this, provides evidence that can be observed, measured, and replicated. Remember, this is more of a hands-on thing, like you need to have a sample, you need to have a sample size, you need to have the population sample, you need to have the methodologies employed. So empirical looks at actual research studies involving primary data collection. Even secondary data collection is still applied. Okay, so often presents a specific methodology, results, discussion, and conclusions derived from data. Right. And actually, I've already explained how you, as a researcher, utilizes such information. Okay, so that's on the characteristics of empirical literature review. The other question is, enumerate the various gaps identified in empirical literature review or research studies. Okay, so enumerate the various gaps identified in empirical research studies. Remember what I was actually explaining to you, that we need to create a gap, but there are various types of gap created. Remember, there could be a gap from the methodology, a methodological gap. It could be a gap from the sampling technique, which you're going to use a different sampling technique. All those are answers. Okay, so a methodological gap can be created as well. And so let me just put it in a more So when there is lack of data or limited data in particular research, this is a data gap. Okay, inconclusive findings among studies. Okay, so this right here is a data gap. Okay, then there's inconclusive or conflicting findings among the studies. Limited research on specific population or context, contextual gap. Okay, so contextual gap. Methodological, this is already what I'm explaining, methodological gap. Areas that haven't been explored or under research area, this can still fall under contextual, or this can be geographical gap, still fine. Still fine. Then for inconclusive or conflicting findings among the studies, so this is still under contextual, all right? Or I would put this as the knowledge gap. Okay, however you spell that. So knowledge gap. So these are the types of gaps that you feasibly come to find in the empirical gap, and I've explained how they are generated. So let's now differentiate between a theoretical review and a theoretical framework. Theoretical review and a theoretical framework. I have my solutions with you. So I'm just gonna paste them right in the screen so that you can have a look at them. Okay. We're trying to understand the differences between the theoretical review and the theoretical framework. It's a very subtle question. Huh? If I was to see this in the exam, I'd be very confused because they're almost similar. Because, you know, one, that's where the other thing comes from. Anyway, it's like asking me what's the difference between a house and a home. So a theoretical review is an overview of existing theories relating to a particular research topic or issue. Then it seeks to summarize and synthesize the theoretical perspective, concepts, and models that exist in literature. So in other words, if you look at this from a perspective of our study, which I said is the effect of mortality. I mean, the influence of mortality, I don't know, effect of mortality on output. I'll look at theories that go with mortality. Maybe that topic was a bit too complex for me because I'm not really just a hypothetical one. Let me say the effect of HIV on, or maybe let me say effect of labor productivity on the GDP of the country. So labor, I'll look at labor theories, the Adam Smith theory of value, and all those things. So the underpinning theories are just, the theoretical review are just the theories that are related to a particular study. Okay, institutional theory, the past score analysis, anything that has to do with the theory. I think I have with me practical example of what I'm talking about. So this is just for academic purposes. Please, you may not be allowed to share this. Great. So I want to show you from a practical sense what I'm talking about. I know most of you have submitted your proposals, so I hope that this is also what you've done. So I'd like to pause this. All right, having shown you that example of a practical paper, let me now show you what the theoretical framework means. In the sense, we're trying to refer to the structure that can hold or support a theory of a research study. It presents and describes the theory which explains why the research problem under the study exists and essentially provides a guide for the research design. So the theoretical framework from the term itself is just is a structure in itself. It's like an entire representation of the theories that you have. Okay, so you've got the technology acceptance theory or model, then you've got the institutional theory. Okay, so as an amalgamation of all those theories is what is leading to a theoretical framework. Okay, then the theoretical review are just the theories that are being reviewed. So one is a framework, which is a structure, then one is just a theory existing within that structure. It's just English, folks. So all right. So any questions so far, please type it in the chat box. I'll be able to attend to it as urgent as possible. Let's now quickly just wind up on the structuring of literature resources in the second chapter of a research dissertation. So explain the structuring of literature resources. So I'll explain it here. So the second chapter of the dissertation, the second chapter of a research dissertation is named the literature review. We know that. Chapter 1, introduction. Chapter 2, literature review. Chapter 3, methodology. Chapter 4, data analysis. Chapter 5, discussions and findings. Chapter 6, recommendations and whatever. So start with the introduction, setting the context and the importance of the study. Then discuss the existing theories, models, and empirical literature review related to the topic. For UNILAS, you begin with empirical literature review. So you don't begin with the theories, you let the theories come in later. Then identify the gaps in the current literature, which can justify the need for the current research. Obviously, we've talked about this. Then conclude by highlighting the key findings and themes in the literature review and transitioning into the next chapter, which is now the methodology. So these are the steps that you need to follow in conducting a literature review. Okay, so it is just introduction, empirical, theoretical, and we have got the conceptual framework. I think there was supposed to be something here. We've got the conceptual framework. From the conceptual framework that we have, and then we get to the, or after the gaps, it actually comes here. After the gaps, then the conceptual framework. All right, then these key findings and themes is what we're talking about as a conceptual framework. And I've told you that the conceptual framework is just a visual representation of your associated variables and how they influence the other variable. Okay, so I'm going to end here for now. I would like you to go through the other sections. The other section, which is the question number 3, the ending, and it's asking us what the type of variables are. Okay. All right. Let me answer it because there's no time. There are types of variables. We've got. I told you about the 3. Independent, and moderating variables. Where the moderating variable is a variable that just is not necessarily does not directly influence a dependent variable, but necessitates its behavior. In short, it exists between the independent and the dependent variable. For example, the effect of fuel on transport, on the cost of transport, the mediating variable would be traffic in Lusaka. Okay, traffic. Okay, the longer you stay in traffic, the more fuel you consume, the more the cost would be. So traffic is not a variable measured. It's just necessitating that the independent variable, which is fuel, is going to cost more because there's more of it, which will then lead vis-a-vis to the increase in the cost. All right. So that's what I'm trying to talk about here. So in this study that we have, we've got the dependent variable. This person got it wrong. I don't know why they put independent variable. This is the dependent variable. The dependent variable dv is now what we have: organization performance. The independent variable are these, and this is where the objectives are. By now, you should be able to form the formula system just from your head. To what structure on what? To what managerial factors on what? All right, cool. And then we have, if we're asked to find the title here, from this, set the research title and draw, just like I thought. So the title is the effect of public entrepreneurship on organizational performance. I can't say factors, no. The effect of public entrepreneurship on organizational performance, and you get a mark. And then draw the conceptual framework of your own proposed research study. Okay, so we find another research study. So you formulate your own here, and then you find objectives, or those tiny objectives, and then you link them to the dependent variable which you're making on your own spare time, But I'm interested in finding what a construct is in research, and identify the constructs in the conceptual framework above. Okay, so when we are referring to a construct is just simply an idea, okay, or a concept that is created for a research purpose. So they can come up with a combination of variables, and then they can be defined in the process. So in other words, let me try to show you. Let me just try to. Okay, I think I can share this with you because it's just the same thing. So this is my answer sheet. So a construct is just an abstract idea of or concept that is specifically chosen or created for a particular research purpose. And then they're made up of a combination of variables that are specifically defined in the research. So in the above framework, the constructs are public entrepreneurship, which has got factors, all those, structural, managerial, and environmental, all of them listed below here. Okay, and we've got governing funding, which are here as the mediating variables here. Okay, and we have the organizational behavior, which is now the organizational performance. Okay, so we have the constructs as in the variables that have been made or combined together to form up an idea or topic. So all these variables are just the very same constructs that we have. Okay, so this is a very free mark because just repeating what's been written above. So identify and classify the types of variables that you study with the above conceptual framework. Government funding is the moderating variable, and we have public entrepreneurship as a dependent variable, as I've explained, the independent variable, sorry, as I've explained, and the organizational performance as a dependent variable, as I've explained. So explain the relationship between a conceptual and theoretical framework. So a conceptual framework is just a visual representation, as I've explained, of your constructs or your variables that have been gathered from related or relevant literature. However, for the theories, the theoretical framework provides these constructs. You can't come up with all these structural factors, managerial factors without you reviewing literature or having where you're backing from theoretically. So the theoretical framework provides you with that literature which are going to form in the conceptual framework. It is from the theoretical framework that you obtain the objectives, which vis-a-vis you extract the objectives, then draw them as in your conceptual framework. So from my answer script, it's saying that the conceptual framework represents the researcher's synthesis of literature on how to explain a phenomenon, and it assists in clarifying the research focus, the variables of the study, and the relationship between the variables. But for the theoretical framework, it isn't just establishing the theories, provide a broad explanation for various phenomena. All right, so this is what I've actually been explaining and talking about. So the conceptual framework focuses on specific relationships. The theoretical framework encompasses and draws from multiple theories that provide context of research. One specific, which is a conceptual framework, which we have here, specific study, public entrepreneurship roles on organizational performance. But theoretical framework has got multiple literature reviews reviewed under various topics so that they could come up with the factors associated with the public entrepreneurship that will lead to us hypothesizing that it has an effect on organizational performance. You know, if I were you from here, I could sit down, relax, and think about other questions like, what research design can I use here? What research analysis can I use here? Because that would help you to really practice better. Okay, thank you for joining me. This session ends here. We'll continue with the others on next question, which is question number 5 on the total quality management. All right, and we've got very beautifully asked questions down below, plus question 6. All right, wonderful. Great.